to any polling place, and there's lots of them. And then we don't have to worry about voters getting confused about where they're supposed to go vote. It was a great way of avoiding what would have been a huge disaster.
Confusing.
Yes, yeah. I live there, and we don't have election day vote centers, but we do have early voting. Okay, so, and in Texas, it's typical in some ballots to have 100+ questions to the voter. So our elections are complicated. We vote for a large number of judges who are running unopposed. It's great. Why? I don't know. Okay, so Travis County has had a bunch of different voting technologies. Before 2001, they used centrally tabulated optical scan. It was a logistical nightmare of managing all these ballots coming back to one place. And then they jumped on the electronic voting bandwagon in 2001. They were one of the first in the state to adopt this device, our InterCivic eSlate. It's got a little iPod with
the eSlate. The eSlate is like it's like an iPod, and you just like turn the dial and you make your selection. There's no paper ballot at all. Jefferson County is just now upgrading from their eSlate to a voting system that actually has a paper ballot audit trail. They're choosing between Hart and ES&S, and I need to check with them and see which one they went with.
Odd wheel that you scroll to pick what you want, and it's locally networked in the polling place, so that there are no they don't have the smart cards that Diebold has, which turned out to be a huge security threat factor. Okay, first the marketing pitch. No ambiguity of voter intent.
You heard that?
Which is great, because when you look at hand-marked ballots, you get ambiguous intent. There are a variety of accessibility features.
No, you don't. It's not that bad. Some people do a bad job with their hand-marked ballots. Why don't you set those aside for curing? You have to cure a shitload of electronic or absentee ballots anyways. Just set those aside for curing. I guess you can't with the in-person voting, but it's not that hard.
Features. They have a headphone jack that works all the time, so it's not like there's accessibility mode and regular mode. It's just talking all the time. Whatever you highlight with the cursor, it's reading. I did it once for fun. I just put the headphones on while I was voting. It works. They get fast results at the end of the day, and they piss off all the election activists. But who cares about that? Around 2011, Dana.
They piss off all the election activists, but who cares about them? You heard that.
And her team said, you know what? It's time for something new. And
that was in 2001. They got the eSlates. In 2011 is when Dana DeBevoise said, let's try something new. 10 years worth of votes. They really didn't care about the election integrity activists. They really didn't. For 10 years, they let people voice their concerns about the eSlates.
And there was nothing on the market that they liked. All the technologies that were for sale weren't really any better. But certainly the world must have gotten better. Hey, maybe I'll call in those academics, right? So Dana calls me and says, Dan, I want you to organize a thing. And I'm like, you're pulling my leg. She's like, no, really. We're going to do this. I'm like, well, can I invite a whole bunch of people and let's have a big meeting in Austin? She's like, we can do that. All right then. So I invited a bunch of people. Now, Josh was so excited. He's like, I'm going to...
Josh from Microsoft.
Take vacation time from Microsoft and come down.
Took vacation from Microsoft to help design this star vote system.
On my own, this is great. I'm like, well, I want this guy Olivier. He's been doing all this cool work. And they're like, well, we can't afford to fly him in from Belgium. Olivier came on his own dime.
So Olivier flew in from Belgium on his own dime, which is a really clever way of avoiding using taxpayer dollars to fly in a foreigner to design our election systems.
Right. This is such a rare opportunity that we all jumped on. So we spent a long weekend discovering the joys of eating dried apricots and wasabi peas. And we came up with a design. So I'm going to be telling you today about that design. But first, some of the constraints that led to the design. Constraint number one, it must have a DRE-style user interface. We're calling this the DRE experience. Sounds like a ride at Disney.
Again, DRE stands for Direct Recording Electronic System. So they want it to be computerized. They really need it to be computerized. They need your vote to be 100% electronic, and the only way for them to do that is to force this. Like they do not want an actual paper ballot trail. The only way to get 100% electronic ballots is to force the system into the DRE style.
A very popular one. So we want to have all the accessibility features that you can get in a DRE style experience, where you can plug in a headphone and it can tell you what's going on. That's really essential. Likewise, if you have low vision, we can have big text, etc. If you're not a native English speaker, we can change it to be another language. We want the kind of accessibility features that
all of this arguably sounds great, right?
you can really only do well when you've got a computer interface, not paper. And it's essential that we can disambiguate voter intent before they leave the polling place. Way, way too many problems happen when you have paper. We don't want to have any lizard people issues. Those of you who haven't seen it. Okay. We want to use off-the-shelf hardware because those e-slates are thousands of dollars, and that's crazy. This thing, just to pick an example, Sony will sell you a 20-inch touchscreen. It's a computer, it has a hard drive, it has a battery, and it's like $1,000. Why can't I use that? Right? And oh, by the
There's a huge emphasis on using commercial off-the-shelf components in these entire voting systems. So, arguably, it's a good point to say, it saves money. It saves money for, like, the production of the machines, which would end up saving the county's monies for investing in them because, they weren't so expensive to make. But there's something to this because this vernacular of off-the-shelf components made its way all the way up to the EAC in the EAC like certification language. Like that's like a thing in the EAC is commercial off-the-shelf components. And it's really just strange. It's very, very strange vernacular that has made its way into every aspect of our elections. In fact, my elections administrator, from Hari Hursty, I heard him say this in the New Hampshire audit, when he was asked by David Clements what equipment they were using to examine the ballots. And Hari Hursty responded, commercial off-the-shelf components. Of course, it took me like 6 times trying to listen to it to decipher that that's actually what he was saying, because he was pretending not to speak good English. He likes to do that when he's on the spot. My elections administrator, Hyder, told me whenever I noticed an off-brand scanner that was being used for the absentee ballots, I said, that's not Hart brand. What is that? And he said, it's a commercial off-the-shelf component. So here we are.
Oh, by the way, then you get to buy a support contract from Sony rather than from Harding or Civic or ESNS or whatever. So it's cheaper to buy, cheaper to maintain. And, I don't know if this is our proposed voting UI or not, but you have a lot of flexibility for how you want to do the UI. We can have a huge screen. Think about the possibilities for low vision voters. Now we can really give them big text. That's what our user interface people say that we need. We're going to have a printer. This is one of the upfront constraints. There shall be printed paper ballots. And so
they consider that a constraint to their 100% electronic voting system.
We're going to have machine printed paper going into a ballot box. So let me 1-to-1. So the paper ballots, we want to have tangible, physical things that a voter can look at and say, yup. Now, never mind that we have human factors results that say half the voters won't notice if we flip their vote, and they'll still love the experience. Nonetheless, the other half might notice errors. So that's something.
I don't think that I'm able to. I'm trying to emphasize to you the severity of this system that they created and the disdain with which it was constructed. Sometimes I'm not good at English. But this presentation is absolutely dripping with disdain for voters, for election integrity activists, for federal law, and for state law. You'll hear more about the state law that they resent as well, that they mock, and to the point that we really have to examine what they've done here. This is a huge issue because the star vote system is the mother of our modern hybrid vote systems, where it's actually 100% electronic, but they have the illusion of the paper ballot.
And the design of this is that we only show them their selections, just like the summary screen on a traditional DRE.
Yeah, it's not a real ballot. It's a PVR, printed vote record, because your vote is 100% electronic.
Allows us to fit that huge number of candidates on one or at most two sheets of paper. Right now we're thinking we'll use US legal size, 8.5 by 14. That's the rough idea. So this is a mock-up of the ballot using Microsoft Excel. The final ballot will almost certainly look a fair bit different. But there'll be a barcode that indicates like your precinct number and some other and some like a random nonce or other data that we need for cryptographic purposes.
What other data? What other data?
Now, the Californians in the room will say, but you're not allowed to have numbers printed on the ballot. Well, the Texas state constitution says ballots shall be numbered. So we're good. Now, don't ask me.
Did you hear them laughing? And that's not what the Constitution says. They said they shall be prepared by being numbered consecutively, beginning with the number 1, not just put numbers on the ballots. That's not what the law says. But see, the way that they discuss this is very, very concerning. There's clearly a law in California against adding any sort of like number or identifying mark to the ballot, but in Texas, yeah, there does need to be a number. But what would be the benefit of them using and abusing that particular provision in a way that they wouldn't be allowed to do in California? But they're happy to do it now, and they're happy to bastardize the actual law in order to do it the way that they're doing it. I think that they're tracking our votes.
Ask me how lever machines were legal to
Change
use
my
in
mind.
Texas when those same lever machines have no possible concept of numbering the ballots. My understanding is the lawyers said, well, ballots shall be numbered means there must be some kind of security mechanism. I don't know.
No, if you read the law, you'd understand. You prepare them, you print them by numbering them consecutively, beginning with the number 1, before anybody ever touches them. See? You just got to read the law, is all, globalists.
I'm not a lawyer.
You don't need to be a lawyer to read the law.
Travis County digs this.